It's Unit 6, Animals. And this unit we are looking at 6.1, Introduction to Animal Studies, looking at things that apply to all animals. Let's go ahead and do it. So animals, what are they? They are multicellular, eukaryotic, heterotrophic organisms in which their cells do not have cell walls. There you have it. That is an example, or that is a definition for animals. Most animals obviously supersede these definitions, but some animals, this is all they are, is that simple definition that I just gave you. There are two groups of animals, vertebrates and invertebrates. 95% of animals are invertebrates. This is everything from sponges to worms to mollusks to arthropods to all kinds of stuff. So many animals, and a very small percentage of the animals on Earth are vertebrates, though those animals are ones we think about most. Just notice that the bird is a passenger pigeon. That's pretty cool. There are 7 essential functions for animals. We're going to talk about them briefly. Feeding. We all know what feeding is. Feeding is just taking in food, right? And all animals are going to take in food in different ways. In fact, some animals are categorized by how they take in food. Like a canine, for instance, has a particular structure to its teeth, and it only eats a certain kind of food. Very specific categorization, whereas others not as tightly as that. And so feeding is an essential function for animals. Definitely. Respiration. The term that we will use for respiration a lot of times is called gas exchange, meaning that we take in oxygen in order to do essential functions and get rid of CO2 because it's poison, and animals need to figure out a way to do both. This is called respiration or gas exchange. You have everything from lungs to sponges, just kind of let water flow over their systems. You know, very simple kinds of respiration, and so very, very complex, but respiration is gas exchange, is respiration. Circulation. This is the movement of materials throughout the body. Animals need to figure out a way to do this in order to get materials to the body's tissues like nutrients and that sort of thing, and oxygen and CO2 for that matter, and to get things out of the system like waste, CO2, other things. And so 2 main kinds of circulatory systems: open circulatory systems and closed circulatory systems. Open systems, the blood just doesn't have a place to go. It's kind of open, and then closed, it's in vessels. We'll talk more about these when we get to this. When we get to the specific examples of that, we'll talk more specifically about them. Excretion. A lot of times when people see this word, they think the removal of solid waste, which is mostly a digestive function. However, excretion has to do with the removal of nitrogenous waste, which is primarily ammonia, which is NH3. I will write NH3 on the board in my class when I'm lecturing over it. But ammonia, so animals need to figure out how to get rid of ammonia. Some just do this by diffusion. A lot of animals have a structure like a kidney or something similar to a kidney in order to filter out nitrogenous waste out of their blood. And that kidney also is oftentimes going to regulate water in the body. And so some animals have a hard time keeping water, other animals live in water, and so you have all this kind of kidney function that's going to be associated with that. We will talk about this as we get to it. And next, an essential function is response. How do animals respond to their environment, or how do they respond to stimuli, which is just some sort of environmental cue, like a taste or a smell or a touch, those simple things. Or you could be a bat and be able to make noises and then understand more about your environment because those noises come back to you. We don't understand that. We don't understand how some snakes are able to see heat. And so different animals have different kinds of responses, some simple, some complex. Some animals don't really respond much to their environment, but most animals have a response to their environment. Movement. Movement is an important part of every animal. Some animals stop moving when they become adults, but at some point in every animal's lives, they move. For some animals, movement is a very important part of the way they get their food and eat and that sort of thing. Not that dog necessarily. I just thought this was a fun picture. But wolves are a great example. Wolves have to run, and so it's how they catch their food. Cheetahs also have to run. That's how they catch their food, but they move in 2 completely different ways. And so you get the idea. Movement's important, and a lot of times an animal's whole body is going to be designed around the way that it moves. Reproduction is the last of those essential functions that we're going to be talking about. And reproduction, obviously, is the making of offspring. All animals reproduce sexually, which has to do with the production of gametes. And some animals can also reproduce asexually, which means that all animals can reproduce sexually, and some of those reproduce asexually also. Moving on. So we're going to talk about some different ways that animals have evolved from other types of organisms in order to kind of specialize or to make them different. And one of these ways is cell specialization. Because animals are necessarily multicellular, then those cells are going to begin to specialize, right? Or take on different jobs or take on different specializations, which is why the word is called that. So I take a sponge, which is a very simple animal. It's going to have very few specialized cells, whereas you take like a whale, it's going to have a couple thousand different kinds of cells located in its body. And so depending on the size and complexity of an animal is going to have more or less cell specialization. Body symmetry, 3 kinds of body symmetry that we're going to talk about. No symmetry or asymmetry. It's the word that I will use in class most, asymmetry or asymmetrical. These are very simple animals that don't have any kind of body plan to speak of. Very simple. Radial symmetry is where an organism has more than one line of symmetry. Think of the word radial, like radius or a circle. A circle has infinite lines of symmetry. Animals don't necessarily have, or these animals don't have multiple or infinite lines of symmetry, but they have more than one. Cnidarians, like that sea anemone or jellyfish, are going to have multiple. A starfish or a sea star is going to have 5 lines of symmetry, right? So they're called pentaradial symmetry. This is just more than one. It's a good way of thinking about it. And then bilateral symmetry, this is going to be the most complex form. A single line of symmetry, bilateral means 2 sides. And so when you have one line of symmetry, you have 2 sides. Going down the middle, this is going to allow for specialization, segmentation, some other things we're going to talk about later, but not today. And next is cephalization. Cephalization is the formation of a head. What is the formation of a head going to allow for? It's going to allow for centralization of the nervous system, which is going to allow for more complex responses to the environment. An cnidarian is able to respond to its environment, but is not able to do so in a complex way because it's a very simple organism, whereas an insect has a brain, has a centralization, being able to respond to the environment and even think about those responses a little bit, take in their information, and then respond accordingly. We call it integration, but we're not going to call it anything in this unit. But just know that you need the cephalization, formation of a head, which allows for centralization. And lastly is the formation of the body cavity. The body cavity is basically just a space inside the body, right? Some animals have none. We're going to talk about what this body cavity is called and all that kind of stuff later. We're not giving it a name in this section. But then some animals don't have a body cavity at all. They generally have to be very small because the body cavity allows for flexibility, allows for a place to store organs. And so animals that have a advanced body cavity, usually more specialized, able to grow larger, and able to do more things.